Tonight, Action Comics decides to make everything more complicated by introducing the concept of sub-chapters to our event books now. Justice League 3000 gave me the first genuine shock I've had on this show in the past, year and a half, and Swamp Thing gives us a panel of Aquaman sipping mimosas with a dugong, and I just cannot describe how happy that makes me. All that and more tonight on the Not-So-New 52. Hello everybody and welcome to episode 144 of the Not-So-New 52. I am your host and don't really have a whole lot to say here in the intro bit, but there is one thing I do want to point out. For anyone who checked out last week's episode, good, you should be watching every episode. I don't know why you would skip one, but for those watching the video version, I think I made it very clear that my microphone stand broke and I had to just kind of jerry-rig something to get the episode out on time. Amazon has delivered. I now have a new microphone arm thing going on, and it's a little bit different than it was before. But the other thing is that I went into the settings with my microphone and I realized I wasn't doing literally anything. I wasn't doing any compressor stuff or noise gates or anything like that, which for people who don't know audio stuff, it probably doesn't mean anything to you. For people who do know audio stuff, you're probably horrified. So I am starting to mess with those settings. If this episode sounds weird or off or not quite as good, please bear with me. I'm still trying to figure out the correct settings. If it does sound off, please let me know in the comments because, I'll hear it, but I won't know if it, what sounds better to me might sound a hell of a lot worse to you. So just let me know if it sounds bad. Or if it sounds good, either. Let me know when I actually hit it smack dab on the money. Regardless, like I said, not a lot going on this week. It is a light week for books and not a lot of big things in them. So I'm just going to go through the list here and then we'll just jump right into it. So in no particular order, this week we have Batwing, Action Comics, Green Lantern, Aquaman and the Others, Earth 2, Green Arrow, Justice League 3000, Phantom Stranger, Swamp Thing, and then our two weeklies, which are Batman Eternal and Future's End. Only things of note out of that are Action Comics and Green Lantern. Both are the next part of their respective events of Doomed and Uprising. And then Green Arrow, because I do love that book, so I will just let you know that is the first part of the next arc that's going on there, so it's a decent jumping on point. But, and Swamp Thing. Oh, God, I gotta mention Swamp Thing. Listen to Aquaman from, I think, last week's episode, and then come over to Swamp Thing on this week's episode. This book is a hoot. I love it. It's so fantastic. And I'm just having fun, all the time with it. So yeah, definitely check that out. But beyond that, standard episode, normal books. Let's jump right on into it. Action Comics number 32, written by Greg Pak, art by Scott Kolins. This is Part 1 of Chapter 2 of Superman Doomed. Because, of course, it had to be that complicated. So, last issue over in Superman, we had Lois showing up and basically telling Superman, hey, go nuts, because the Teen Titans need help or something like that. And then Superman just flew off and tried to help, but it turns out he's causing more harm than good in his current state. So we see Superman's flying across the forests of, I think, the Northwest, and as he's flying by, he's setting fire to everything just by being around there. Everything is just dying. And he's like, yeah, I don't think this is good. And a bunch of government, bomber drones show up, and it's yeah, no, I probably deserve that by now. So we see Senator Sam Lane giving a speech saying, yeah, Superman, he saved the day, but he's becoming Doomsday, so now he's an enemy of the state. And I'm just going to let my daughter Lois up here, despite the fact that she's just a normal-ass reporter. And so Lois steps up and says, yeah, Superman told me to tell everybody that he's not safe. He shouldn't be trusted, and everybody needs to, keep their distance and whatnot. And so we see Wonder Woman trying to call up Superman. Meanwhile, Lana is the one who picks up the phone, and Wonder Woman's like, what the hell are you doing picking up his phone? He's like, what are you talking about? This isn't his phone, it's my phone. And it turns out that both Lana and Wonder Woman talk to Clark about, if there's an emergency, call this number. And he just gave them each other's numbers, knowing that they could talk it out themselves. So Lana's like, look, I mean, are you cool? Or do you still trust Superman, despite the fact he's saying that we shouldn't trust him? And Wonder Woman's like, of course I do. She's like, all right, cool. Just need to know you're on board. So there's this weird coma thing going on around Smallville. Apparently their brainwaves are going out into space. I think that's worth looking into. And Wonder Woman's like, cool, all right, I'll let the Justice League know. So then we go over to a base in the middle of nowhere, and it's Metallo. He's back. I swear to God, I feel like the last time we saw him was beginning of Forever Evil, and he definitely wasn't in this position, but they bring him back, and Sam Lane and Lois Lane are like, hey, look, you're not under control of anybody. We have 100% given you your freedom, but we think that you're the perfect man to go take down Superman right now. So out in the deserts of Chile, Superman's just chilling out on a mountaintop. Steel manages to get a ping on Superman, so he comes in, and he's like, hey, let me help. What can I do? And he's like, Steel, do you hear that? Do you feel that in the air? And he's like, nah, I don't see anything in the air. He's like, right. There should be a bunch of little microbes and tiny little things that, even out in this desert, can survive. But I've killed them all. Just by being around me, they've all incinerated. And that's just going to keep happening and keep getting worse. It's too late for me. And Steel's like, no, it's not. Look, we're going to take you to the moon. We're going to put you in, the silver armor thing that I got. It should contain this issue. And then we'll take care of it. No big deal. And he's like, you want to take me to the moon? Away from the people of Earth? You want me to abandon Smallville? And he's like, okay, you can't have it both ways here, Superman. We're going to do this one way or the other. And so Superman's like, you're right. By the way, here's the key to the Phantom Zone projector. If things get too bad, I need you to throw me in there. Just promise me you'll do that. And he's like, it won't come to that, but okay. And he shakes Superman's hand, and Superman just starts crushing his hand, and he's like, I'm telling my hand to release, but it's not doing it. It's only crushing down harder. This isn't good. So Steel finally gets away. Superman's so flustered by it, he just swats him away. And that's when Lex Luthor pops on the comms, and he's like, Steel, have you got Superman? He's like, yeah, he's right here. I'm taking care of it. He's like, no, you're not. Because the government is sending in Metallo on a jet drone thing. It's loaded up with a whole bunch of knickknacks and goodies. You have to stop this. And, he doesn't trust Lex, but he does see it coming. So he's like, Superman, whatever happens, do not engage. Just sit there and take it. I will take care of this. So at this point, we see Metallo's flying in on the ship, and he's saying, oh, I'm ready for him. And Lois, I promise, once this is all done, I'm going to get better. Well, I'm going to be... by the way, I can feel you in my head. I don't know how you're doing that, but, I'm cool with it. And Lois is like, oh, yeah, no, totally. I'm definitely in your head. But, you do what you got to do, Metallo. So Steel comes up. He just bashes the wing off the thing immediately. And it turns out that inside of it, being, the power source for the ship is a guy that he calls Joseph Martin, which I believe is Atomic Skull, but they never call him by that name. They just say Joseph Martin, and so when he bashes open the ship, I'm going to call him Atomic Skull, pops out, and he just starts yelling at Steel, and he's just like, oh, you thought I was sleeping and comatose in your lab, but I was awake all that time. How dare you keep me trapped? And he's like, I'm trying to help you. So they get into a bit of a fight. They go down. Meanwhile, the jet is on a collision course with Superman. Lex Luthor's hologram shows up and says, bro, look, I know your immediate impulse is to go in there and do something, whether it be punching it or saving it, but right now, the only way you can do this is leave the goddamn Earth, man. And Superman's like, I know, he's right. I'm right on the verge of losing myself, but I X-ray vision the jet and I see that it is loaded to the brim with nanoparticles of kryptonite. But there's no launching mechanism. There's no missiles or anything. It's just stored in that, which means that this is a kamikaze mission, and Metallo's gonna unwillingly sacrifice himself. So he goes in and he's like, I gotta save him. That's at the very least, that's still what Superman would do. So he goes in, he rips off the roof. Immediately Metallo blasts him with kryptonite. And he's like, I don't care if I'm kamikaze. If that's what my job is, so be it, as long as I'm taking you with me. So at that point, Lois telepathically says goodbye to Metallo, saying, yes, you've done well, soldier, goodbye. And then the whole ship explodes, and all the kryptonite explodes out in this massive thing. He is trying to save Metallo, but then his skin just like straight up incinerates, so Metallo's dead. The cloud spreads over, as far as I can tell, the entire Western Hemisphere. It's able to be seen in the Arctic, in Smallville, and in New York. So, and it started in Chile, mind you. So everyone's freaking out seeing this cloud of kryptonite, and it's just like, oh god, what's happened? What's going on? We see Superman's eyes are red down in the pit, and he's like, oh, get up, this is just the beginning. So Steel goes down, he's ready to go help Superman, and Lex is like, Steel, get the hell out of there. And he's like, no, I could see him, Superman, he's down there. And Lex is like, no, you idiot. Superman is gone. And the only thing that was holding back the Doomsday part of him, that's the part that the kryptonite targeted. So all that's left is Doom. And we see super spiky looking Superman jump up out of the hole, ready to wreck something. It's fine. It's a good issue. I enjoy it. I think my biggest problem I'm having right now with it is that they keep on working in the like, oh, but is this actually all just a plan of Brainiac? And if it is, fine, I'm okay with that. But it's not doing anything to make me care about that side of things. It's so much more interesting seeing Superman trying to deal with fighting back the Doomsday stuff. I mean, at this point, that's, I guess, done now because he's dead. Like, it's just Doomsday. So at the very least, maybe we can move on a little bit from there. But up until this point, they keep on doing this thing of Lois having these powers, and it's just not ever capitalized on. Art-wise, pretty good. There's a few things I would criticize, specifically when Superman uses super speed at one point. It's like just a weird opacity effect. I don't know. Not a fan of it. But everything else is okay. So I'll give this one I'll give it a 7. It just feels sort of middle area for me, not something super standout, but at least now it feels like we're getting to a real heavy meat of the story of everybody versus Superman Doomsday, which is cool. Green Lantern number 32, written by Robert Venditti, art by Billy Tan. This is part 3 of the Uprising event, following up after Green Lantern Corps 31, and we open up on some random moon where there is a whole bunch of cooned ships, and it's like, okay, our battle at Mogo didn't go super great, but now is the time to strike back. We are going to swing in there, and we're going to do everything we can to fight against the Lanterns. And like the general commander guy is coming in, and he's telling all the soldiers, like, I expect some good ideas right now. What do we got? And that's when the Lanterns show up on this moon, and they're just like, well, maybe we can help. So at that point, we cut over to the center of like the, I don't know, fleet, if you want to call it that. The Durlans, the Kund, and the Bradesmen. And the 3 representatives for each of them are talking. And the Kund and the Bradesmen are basically like, yeah, we're out. Like, that's this, whatever you're doing, Durlans, whatever weird-ass, like, backwards plans you're doing, it's not working. Like, we could have killed all the Lanterns at Mogo, but you just turn around and ran. And that's just not cool, all right? So the Bradesman's already out. Bradesman's like walking to the door. It's what's her name? And she, as the Kund commander is arguing with him, the Durlan's basically like, hey, there are like barely a handful of Durlans left. If any of us die, it is an absolute tragedy. Yes, we turned around and ran because we couldn't risk the continuation of our species as a whole. But do not think that we're done here. Like, this is not over just because you guys leave. We've got big plans, and we are not going to share the universe with anybody. And it's at that point that the Durlan, who was on a hologram, just disappears, and then all of a sudden one of the Coon ship blows up, and everyone's freaking out, like, oh, the Lanterns must be here, they must have found us. And then they say, like, wait a minute, hold on, no, that was an explosion from the inside. And then every other ship on the fleet just starts exploding internally, and it's obvious this is the Durlans not wanting to play ball. So Prixium of the Bradesmen takes her guys, gets on a ship, and just like, all right, we got to go now. So they hop on. They manage to escape the explosion of the final Coon ship, and it's like, okay. The Durlans have gone nuts. They've backstabbed us. There's no way they're going to play ball, which means we need to figure out what we're doing next. Meanwhile, the Green Lanterns, they're attacking the other Coon warriors on the moon. They easily get them on the back foot. They charge in. They're just like, oh yeah, sorry, looks like your dreams are done. And then, of course, all the Coon ships there explode. And Hal's like, what in the hell was that, man? And he thinks, like, for a second, like, I mean, maybe, you know, they were on the back foot. Maybe it was like a kamikaze sort of thing. They were surrendering, but immediately Hal's like, nah, they don't play that way. The Coon don't surrender. We got to figure out what caused that explosion. That's weird. So over at Mogo, Hal's reporting in to Kilowog saying like, yeah, is anyone else getting this? And it's like, yeah, it's happening literally everywhere. We don't know what's up, but we'll figure it out. Meanwhile, Hal is, by the way, they mentioned the stuff going on with John and the planet of Daxam, which, if you haven't been keeping up in the other book, they found a Daxamite lantern in the Durlan prison, and it's implied that they were running experiments on him. So at this point, the Bradesman ship shows up towards Mogo, and Hal, as he's coming back, he's like, oh, let me talk to them. I'll handle that. So the Bradesmen show up, and they're just like, are you sure this is a good idea, Prixium? Like, we are war criminals. And it's like, yeah, no, don't worry. They're police. They'll play by the rules. And Hal just immediately throws in some harpoon constructs and tears the ship apart. And he's like, hey, you guys are under arrest. And so he puts them all into science cells, and he starts talking to Prixium. And she basically says, look, fine, whatever, you want to do that. Here's the thing. We made a bunch of deals with the Durlans, and so we know a lot of internal stuff, and now that they backstabbed us, all I'm asking for is revenge. I want to be the one that takes out the Durlans, and I'm willing to share information to make that possible. And Hal's like, you have nothing to offer. We're already like, all we're going to do is go to Planet Durlan. We're going to take them out. And it's like, no. They're not going to be at Planet Durlan. They're going to be looking for an incredible energy source so that they can fuel their transformations. And I know where that energy source is. And Hal's like, okay, cough it up. And she's like, are you going to let me play ball? And he's like, maybe, if you show me something first. And she manages to point out that one of their lanterns, the one who is like a living energy fireball, he already described earlier on how he comes from a planet of just living energy, and they all live in a sea of fire. And immediately Hal's like, oh, they're heading for his home planet. Oh yeah, okay, they're sitting ducks. There's no way they're going to be able to defend themselves. We gotta go. So meanwhile, over on the planet of Zezin, which is where that is, the Durlans come in and they see the sea of fire, and it's just like, yes, all right, we've got plans, guys. We're going to do this. We're going to transform, but we got to wait. And the Zezin king like springs up from the sea, and he's like, hey, you're not welcome here. Go away. And that's when one of the Durlans says, screw you, man. And he grabs him and just swallows him whole. And it turns out that they were looking for enough power, not just to transform, but to permanently lock their transformation. If they absorb enough power, they don't have to worry about ever getting power again. So eating one of these guys is enough to do it. He manages to stay in his big hulking brute form, and he's like, guys, you got to try this. This is great. And then all of a sudden, the like head Durlan in charge just blasts through his chest and says, you freaking idiot. You just locked yourself into a vulnerable form. Everyone needs to wait until we get to the invulnerable forms. If that's not clear, we're all turning into Daxamites, okay? That's the plan. We'll be like Superman, but not a Kryptonian. So everyone wait until we get that, and then we will drink up in the sea of energy. So that's where it ends. I like it. This finally feels like the two different stories are merging together, because obviously last time in the core book, the whole Daxamite plan was brought up and finally feels like, okay, this is we've got the final markers here. We got that the Durlans are going to make themselves invulnerable, and there's also now in this book another entire race of people that are at risk because these Durlans are going to absorb them. So it's got some good stakes to it. I'm down for it. Art-wise is a little bit shaky for me. Not everything. It just feels like some of the panels are a little bit, I don't know, rushed, basic. Like there's specifically one face in here of Hal that I'm just like, oof, no, doesn't look good. but in general, it's okay. I think I'll just give this one I'll give it a flat 7. It's all right. It's not a standout issue by far. I think that the next issue of Core might actually be the wrap-up of Uprising. I think it's only a 4-issue thing. I could be wrong there, but if so, I'm looking forward to seeing how this wraps up. Batwing number 32, written by Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Eduardo Pansica. So last issue, Luke got into a big fight with Menace and then just left the fight. Like, it was whatever. This issue, we have Tiffany, I believe that's her name, the younger sister, is running through the crowd in the underground just trying to escape Ratcatcher. We see Ratcatcher is also chasing around the corner using his rats to keep eyes on her no matter where she goes. Truly disgusting to look at, but she manages to get her way down an alley and starts climbing up a ladder. And Ratcatcher's like, you can't get it. I got eyes everywhere. I can see everywhere you go. And so he starts being lifted up by a pile of rats to grab her off this ladder. She's screaming out for help. And that's when someone comes in and smashes the glass tube thing that's on top of Ratcatcher's head, and he crashes down to the ground, and we see the Batwing's the one on top. He's like, hey, you're safe, I got you, let me help you out. And Ratcatcher's like, she's not going anywhere, and he just hits him with another batarang, knocking him out. So we cut back up, meanwhile, to Wayne Tower, where Lucius is just 100-mile long stare. Like, he is just staring out of Gotham, and he's remembering the first time he saw Tiffany take her first steps. And he was working from home, and he was so happy that he got to see it. But then in this daydream, she just crumbles in his hands, and he feels like he's losing her. And then all of a sudden, he's shaken out of his dream by his assistant, and he's just like, hey, your wife called, your daughter was found. Like, they're down at the hospital. Go for it, man. So he makes his way down to the hospital, immediately happy to reunite with her. No major injuries, no lasting damage, anything like that. Luke is staying with Tam in order to make sure that she's okay, and it's just like, okay, cool, awesome. Well, why don't you tell us what happened, Tiffany? And so Tiffany starts to recap, and we see that when Batwing extended his hand, she's like, no, I don't know you. Everyone down here sucks. I don't know who you are. And he's like, I'm wearing the bat symbol. I'm part of Batman. Come with me. And she's like, Batman's scariest of all. Why would I want to do that? So she starts just climbing down the ladder, just saying like, no, I'm not going with you. I'll find my own way out. Get out of here. And immediately Batwing sees like a bunch of other people who are all about to jump on Tiff. And he's just like, all right, I'm out of options here. I need to get her to trust me. There's only one way I can think to do that. And so he says, Tiff, it's me. And he takes off his mask, revealing that it's Luke underneath. And she's like, oh my God. And he's like, yeah, no, later. We got to move now. So all those people that were about to attack come in. They start doing so. Batwing just starts beating the crap out of him. And he's like, all right, when I say so, you're going to come to me. All right, let's go. And so he zip lines up and out and says, I'm taking you back home to mom and dad. So Lucius is like, so Batman saved you? And she's like, I don't know. He was wearing a bat symbol. I don't know which one it was, but yeah, I guess. And so they're all happy. And Tiffany's like, oh, can I go see Tam? Can I go see my sister? I've missed her so much. And immediately the parents are like, ooh, yeah, she doesn't really know. So we cut over to a church, and this is where Luke has brought Tam, and he's basically just pleading with God, just like, why are you doing this to me? Why are you doing this to my family? Like, yes, I got my other sister back, but like, is it because I'm Batwing? Is it for something else? Like, why am I being punished here? More specifically, why was my sister like made brain dead, essentially? I don't understand your thought process here, God. So he just asks for some hope and wants to know why God works in mysterious ways. Meanwhile, later that night, we see some motorcycle gang is attacking a random family in a sedan, smashing in windows, such like that. And then one by one, they all start getting attacked by Batwing. And it's a big action scene. Batwing lands on the roof of the car, and the woman's like, oh, it's Batman. And he's like, nope, it's Batwing. And the kid in back's like, Batman, Batwing, Batman. All right, whatever. So he takes out the motorcycle gang, lets them drive on safely, and makes his way up to a rooftop. And Batman's there waiting, saying, hey, man, where were you at? And he's like, I was helping my family. I needed to do that. And he's like, yeah, well, I could have helped. And he's just like, yeah, look, hey, how do you deal with the fact that Gotham is literally the worst place on earth? And he's like, I'm fighting back against it. That's how I deal with it. And he's like, yeah, but like, do you have anything that you hold dear? Like, there's no way you keep it in this city. There's no way that makes any sense. And he's just like, look, I know you're upset. And he's like, no, I'm way past upset. Like, I've had so much stuff going on here. And Batman calls him out. He's like, bro, you broke my code. You went and you nearly killed those people on the bridge. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. I thought instilling fear was what Batman was all about. That's what I was doing. I didn't kill them. And he's like, yeah, but you nearly did. And I'm not going to have you crossing that line. Don't become one of the monsters out there. And Batwing just flies off and says, yeah, I'll try to keep that in mind. And that's where it ends. It doesn't end on like a super positive note. That being said, I don't think we're done because we never actually dealt with Menace. So I have a feeling that we're still going to get the payoff to that. But at the very least, we wrapped up the whole family kidnapping plot stuff. And we've given Luke something new to do where, yeah, the city kind of sucks. What is he going to do about it? So overall, I enjoyed the issue. I don't think it's really a super satisfying finish to the end of the arc, but like I said, I don't think that the arc is technically done yet. This is one of those books that kind of just has a rolling story. It's harder to knock down specific arcs that are going on at any given time. So I'm going to say this is I'll give it a 6.5. It's close to the 7. It's very close, but I don't know. There's just, it didn't feel like I got a full issue's worth. Like, I was done reading this in no time at all. And that's not to say that it's not completely without merit. It was still fun, but it didn't feel like there was a full story being told here. It felt like picking up the scraps to the last issue and then setting up future stuff, not its own independent thing. Aquaman and the Others, number 3, written by Dan Jurgens, art by Medina. So last issue, everyone arrived and started fighting some big rock golems, and then a lady with superpowers showed up. The whole plot's then the relics and like rescuing a sister of the other one. Anyway, we go back to thousands of years ago, continuing the story of Atlan, who stole the gold from this random dude. And his son is going out, and they track down Atlantis, and it's like, great, cool, let's go in there and get the gold back from Atlan. But wouldn't you know it, they arrived on the day where Atlantis sunk to the bottom of the sea, so that didn't work out. Meanwhile, the others are all facing down against this woman who is got some sort of superpowers going on. Her name is Daria. And she's like, yeah, no, we've got this girl you're looking for, and we're going to kill her. And it's just like, okay, do we know her? And Sky's like, yeah, that's the sister. That's the one we're looking for. And it's like, okay, cool. So at that point, Yawara sicks her panther on the woman. And the woman uses some sort of weird magical thing to transform the panther into a much bigger, angrier panther with tusks, and then sicks it on Yawara. Yawara, like, is almost killed by it, but then Operative steps in and shoots it, and she's like, hey, look, I'm sorry about your panther, but, like, it was gonna kill you. And she's like, no, I get it. I'm blaming her for this. And she turns around to Daria and is like, you're gonna die. And she's like, yeah, I'd love to see you try. So Daria then teleports them all into the castle and outstops her brother Anton, and everyone's ready for a fight, and they're ready to go. And it's just like, well, hold on, guys. Let's just figure out what's going on. Let's get a lay of the land here. You guys are talking about our relics. You're saying hand over the relics. What's that about? Why do you want them? And it's like, well, they belong to us. And it's like, actually, they belong to Atlantis. They've been a part of that for a very long time. And then Prisoner of War is just like, I believe that the manacles belong to me. I'm the one who's been wearing them for so long. So what do you mean they belong to Atlantis, man? But either way, Operative apparently knows where they are. This is a place called Trezigstan, which is just known for being super traditionalist, and like science doesn't even have a place here. It's all done with magic and whatnot. And the last time Operative was here on a mission, like, he saw some messed up stuff, man, that he doesn't want to talk about anymore. So Aquaman's like, okay, all right, you have the girl, you're threatening her, and you want us to trade over the relics. Here's my deal. You give us the girl, we leave, and you don't get anything. And we don't destroy your entire castle. And she's like, oh, that's cute. You think that you have the ability to deal with stuff here. And she like goes and pats Aquaman on the cheek, and Yoara's like, don't you touch him. And he's like, oh my god, do you have a crush on Aquaman? That's so cute. That's adorable. So at that point, immediately, Prisoner of War's like, yeah, are we ready to go yet? And Aquaman's like, yeah, go for it. So he does a big mandible blast and blows everyone away. Everyone goes and splits apart throughout the manor looking for the girl, for Saya. So we get Sky and Yawara, Prisoner of War and the Operative, and Aquaman and Aaron are all going about their different ways. And Aquaman's like, Aaron, don't make me regret like bringing you with me, man. Don't slow me down. And he's like, I'm not the newest member on the team, right? So then we go over to Sky and Yawara, who have made their way to a big glass like pool or something like that they're able to see anywhere in the castle. And then Anton comes out and he's like, oh, I can see far farther than that. I can see so much. Anyway, give me your relics. And he's like, nah, never. So Anton brings forth a few more golems they start fighting against. Yawara is smacked around hard enough that Sky's like, okay, this is too much. I'm going to help you. And she teleports Yawara away. And everyone thinks like, oh, she used her teleportation ability to run away from us. So they just attack Sky and take her out. Meanwhile, Operative and Prisoner are just making their way through, looking for clues. Prisoner eventually comes across one, and he's like, whoa, hold on. There's some fibers here that don't belong to Daria. This must belong to the girl we're looking for. And Daria's like, you figured it out. Yep. But I'm able to change things. My whole thing is transmutation, and I changed all the air in this room into an unbreathable gas, knocking Prisoner out. And Operative's like, good thing I got air filters, man. So he goes to attack her, and Daria is super offended that anyone has laid hands on her. So she summons some ninjas, I guess, and they all just start beating the crap out of Operative. So finally we get to Aquaman and Aaron. They get to this lone tower away from the rest of the castle, and as they make their way in, they find Saya, and it's just like, hey, we're here to rescue you. So sorry this happened. But as she looks at Aquaman, she sees not only Future's End Aquaman, where he is in like a robot spider body, but also Aquaman with his own trident impaled into his chest. And he's like, that's weird. I'm seeing two of you. And Aquaman's like, I don't know what you're talking about, but we gotta go. So at that point, a couple of flying swords come out of nowhere, and Aquaman fights them off. And then there's some voices, just ethereal voices. And they're saying like, oh, she's afraid of you, Atlantean. She sees things in the future. I definitely want some of that. And then out through all of this smoke comes our main guy, I guess, who calls himself Legend. And he's like, all I want is what was stolen. So we then go to Yawara, who was teleported not via her globe, but via Sky's power to send people to the ghost zone. And she starts talking to Kahina, the woman who originally had Sky's trinket. And she's like, oh my god, it's so great to see you. This is super weird, because like I'm not cool with the land of the dead thing. I much prefer the land of the living. And Kahina's like, look, I get it, I understand what you're saying, but like, there's some crazy stuff going on with my sister, and one like ignoring the whole whatever's going on in this tower plot. Once you get my sister alone, like please help her out. It's definitely something that you're gonna have to do. And then they come across Vostok, who also was killed during the original arc, and he's like, yep, just to make you aware, your next mission's got some crazy stuff going on. So we cut back to Aquaman fighting against Legend, and Legend's like, hey, here's my backstory. I'm actually super duper ridiculously old, and my grandfather is the one that King Atlan stole the gold from. And Aquaman's like, cool, I hate King Atlan too, but like, you can't have the relics, and I'm not gonna let you do that. So Aaron pulls out his gun, he's about to shoot, and the Legend just like yoinks it out of the air. So while he's distracted, Aquaman, Aaron, and Saya try to escape, and Legend, what's his name, Anton comes in, and he's like, Grandpapa, we've got them all, except for the jungle lady and the mask. I don't know where the mask is. And it's just like, all right, well, I'll get the trident. And so Legend just extends his hand, and all of a sudden the trident comes out of Aquaman's hands, turns around, and stabs him through the stomach. And his final words are, finally, my father is avenged. So yeah, no, a whole lot of stuff happened. I liked it. I know that the size on either side of that make it sound like I didn't, but like it's hard to put into words exactly what I feel is going on with this first arc. It feels a bit too overstuffed, I guess would be the best word. I just feel as though while there is obviously a guiding thing here of like, okay, yeah, you know, the relics, there was like, how were they made? And there was the original owners and blah, 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 blah. Okay, you want to explore that? Fine. It's the Future's End stuff that's still just throwing me for a loop. Like, if you want to say this girl can see the future and she sees Aquaman getting stabbed in the chest with his own trident, that's fine. Like, you can have that. But why do we keep showing the Future's End stuff? That's what's getting me. And it doesn't feel like it's going to pay off in this book, obviously, because Future's End is just its own book, but like it really feels like it's trying to, and that's what's bothering me about it. Either way, I think I'd probably just give this one like a flat 6, because it's just a bunch of expositing and then like half a fight scene, if even. It's barely even like a punch thrown. So yeah, I'll give this one a flat 6. Not great, but it's not like the worst thing I've read. So what's Future's End got to do with this? I'm so confused. Earth 2, number 24, written by Tom Taylor, art by Eddy Barrows. So last issue, the parademons were attacking Batman's cave, and so he set off a nuke to just take them all out, and then Green Lantern and Hawkgirl stay behind. So this issue picks up with Jay Garrick, who is currently being tortured by the Beguiler, and Beguiler's like, yes, you heal so quickly, it's so good to have you. And Jay's like, I don't understand. And he's like, what's there to not misunderstand? I like torturing. And Jay's like, no, you're like a skeleton person. Like, I can see into your head, and I can see there's no brain in there. How the hell are you moving around? You are like a genetic freak, you know that? And Beguiler's like, all right, I'm going to keep torturing you some more, and I'm probably going to rip out your tongue, so enjoy that. But then before he can do so, he's interrupted by Bedlam, and Bedlam's like, hey, all those parademons got nuked in Gotham, so Beguiler, we're going to need you to help out with that. So we see that the only things that survived were Hawkgirl, Green Lantern, and 2 parademons, and they're all trapped inside a Green Lantern bubble, and Hawkgirl's like, was it a good idea to trap us in here with them? And Green Lantern pulls out they're not trapped in here, or sorry, we're not trapped in here with them, they're trapped in here with us. And he starts to like go to beat the crap out of the parademon. He says, I'm not going to hurt you. I want you to send a message to your guys that they failed. So go, tell them. And so Hawkgirl's like, I think they know they failed, man. That's not something you need to like do. And he's like, yeah, no, I'm just going to track them because I could feel your presence, Hawkgirl. I can't feel Jay Garrick's. I don't know where he is. So I'm just going to let them go back to home base, and we're going to follow them there and hope that he's at that place. Hawkgirl's like, all right, cool. So meanwhile, on Amazonia, where the World Army is currently licking its wounds, Batman and crew all show up there, and they bring out Red Arrow, and of course Red Arrow died last issue. The commander there calls for a medic, and it's just like, it's too late. He's already dead. And so Batman turns around to Val and is like, bro, you're a Kryptonian. You could have fought all of them off. Why didn't you? And Val like stutters out an answer. He's like, no, you don't get excuses. This is all on you, man. I blame you for this. And Batman storms off after making Val feel bad. So Jimmy Olsen goes after Batman, and he's like, hey, Batman, look, we got to talk. And he's like, I got nothing to say to you, kid. And he's like, you're Thomas Wayne. He's like, all right, I'm listening. What do you got to say? And he's just like, all right, look, here's the thing. Stop being a dick. Like, Val has all this incredible power, and he chooses a path of nonviolence. That's commendable. We should applaud that. And you know that, like, he's working through stuff. You don't got to be such a dick about it, okay? Nothing is gained by you being so damn angsty. So get off your high horse and learn to work with him instead of against him, all right? Batman's just like standing there like, Jesus, man, I just got told off by a kid. So, meanwhile, in Washington, I believe at the actual Washington Monument, it looks like, they find like a whole horde of parademons, and it's like, oh, he's here. And Hawkgirl's like, oh, you're sure? And he's like, nope, but I can feel the darkness, this void where I'm unable to reach to. So he's probably in there. And so Green Lantern lays down the plan. He's like, I'm going to be such a pain in the ass and distract all the parademons, and then you go in and you grab Flash. And she's like, that's not really a plan. And he's like, well, we're doing it anyway. Let's go. So he starts fighting literally all the parademons as Hawkgirl gets inside. There's a few that manage to follow her. She shoots him down, gets by him, no big deal, until she does come across the torture room where Jay Garrick's held up. And she's like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Not really. Can we go now?" So they evacuate the building. We see Beguiler is attacking Green Lantern. He's like, "Oh, I will eat you, Green Lantern." And Green Lantern just blasts him into a building and doesn't hold back at all. So they fly out. Hawkgirl says, "All right, let's go." And he's like, "No, I have to stay here. I have to take out all of them." And Hawkgirl's like, "That's really stupid. If you just come with us, we can regroup with the rest of everybody else. And we can just let them know that this is here and we can take care of it later." He's like, "No, the Earth needs me to protect it. I have to do this. It's my calling," or whatnot. And Hawkgirl's like, "Okay, but still stupid. And if that's the case, how about this? Work with us. Let's just kite them back to a place that we can do something Batman and the Amazonia and all that." And he's like, "All right, fine, I can do that." So he puts them in a bubble, and Hawkgirl calls up Batman telling him what the plan is. So then one last scene, we go over to Amazonia. Val is just basking in the sunlight, and Jimmy Olsen comes up. He's like, "Does it feel good?" Superman said it always felt great. And he's like, "Yeah, it feels like a piece of me that was always missing." And he apologizes. He's feeling guilty about Connor. And he's just like, "Look, that's not your fault. Batman's a dick. Don't worry about what he has to say. He's got his own problems to deal with. None of that is actually your fault." And Jimmy points out and says "Hey, this whole time you've been with us, you've had on this hoodie. And it's in tatters now, but you're still wearing it. What are you hiding underneath that?" And he's like, "I'm not hiding anything." It's like, "Okay, but we can just get you a new hoodie. You're going to have to take that one off eventually. You may as well just show us." And he's just like, "Yeah, all right." And so he does the thing with the Superman rip, and underneath is the crest of the House of L. It is the big S. And Jimmy says, "Well, holy crap." So I think next issue we might get some explanation as to who the hell Val Zod is, because clearly if he's wearing the House of L crest, there's something to him. If not, I think it's coming down the pipeline eventually. Yeah, no, it's I think this one's solid. I think it does a good job of balancing the action and then also the character work itself. It gives not only character to Jimmy and Val, but also it gives something to Batman and Alan Scott, honestly, which I think has been missing for a lot of this. Even going back to the first arc where Alan had his biggest character beats, once he put on the ring, it kind of just felt like he was generic hero mode. And I feel like this is the first time we're getting a look into the psyche of he feels like the protector of the entire Earth. He feels like the Superman without Superman being here. So I'm down for that. It's a nice little character thing, and then add on the extra little fun bits of action. Just a nice issue all around. So I'll go ahead. I will give this one a just shy of the 8. So I'm going to give it a 7.5, but it is still very, very good. I'm actively looking forward to the next issue, seeing what sort of explanation we can get for Val Zod and seeing how he's going to be able to step up to the plate in the issues coming up. Green Arrow number 32, written by Jeff Lemire, art by Andrea Sorrentino. So last issue was the wrap up to that whole big Outsiders plot, but the end of the story showed Diggle, Naomi, and Henry, I think his name is, all getting caught by Talkman and Richard Dragon, who, again, I will call Dickie Dragon. So we see Seattle is stuck in a crime wave. Everything's going horrible. It's a whole big war as Dickie Dragon takes over. And we see the news is reporting saying oh, the National Guard might get called in, but where's Green Arrow? And we see back at the Arrow Cave, or whatever you want to call it, Oliver makes his way back. An arrow just barely misses his head, and we see Naomi's the one who's fired it because they weren't expecting him to be back. And he's like, "Oh, geez, guys, hey, what are you doing?" And they're like, "Oh my God, you're back, thank God." And he's like, "Yeah, sorry. The whole Outsiders thing happened, and then in between those arcs, Forever Evil. Would you believe it? That's where Forever Evil came up." And Henry's like, "Hey, look, all this stuff happening out in Seattle, it's Dickie Dragon. He's the one causing all of this, and he's got Diggle." And Naomi explains this whole thing, saying that, yeah, we went in, we were trying to get a one-up on him while you were gone, and it all went sideways, and we only just barely managed to get away. And Oliver's like, You're not Green Arrow. This isn't your book. Why are you running off and doing things without me? Should have waited for me. And Naomi gets right up on his face and just like, bro, you just left in the middle of an arc to go deal with like family drama. That is... screw you, man. And Oliver's like, okay, look, I get it, but... And all of a sudden there's some thunking noises, and it's like, oh, wait, did you guys say you barely escaped? Okay, they let you escape in order to lead you back here. Yeah, we're probably already dead. And then a giant explosion happens, blowing out all the walls of the place. So Oliver comes to, and standing over top of him in the rubble is a woman who goes by the name of Red Dart. And she's like, hey, Dickie Dragon put out a... was it $30 million bounty on your head, and I'm here to collect it, and my name is Red Dart. And it's like, seriously? Red Dart versus Green Arrow, that's what we're doing? She's like, yep, let's see who's faster. And she pulls out like a gauntlet that has just a bunch of darts on it. So seems like she is. Then we go over to Dick Dragon, who is currently torturing / interrogating / whatever Andy Diggle. And Count Vertigo's there, and he's like, God, can we please just hurry the plot up? I want to go fight Green Arrow, and then I want to get back to my home country. And he's just like, we're doing things on my watch, Count Vertigo. That's me, Dickie Dragon. So at that point, Diggle's just like being a smartass, and as Dragon's saying like, oh, this is all part of a larger plan, a greater cause. And he's just like, yeah, greater cause. It's always money and power. And he's like, yeah, of course it's money and power. This is America. What else would be the greater cause? So at that point, Diggle's like, who the hell are you, man? You just popped up out of nowhere. What's your backstory? And he's like, oh, you want to know? My father's name was Ricardo Diaz. Ring any bells? And immediately Diggle's like, oh, Ricardo Diaz? He was a thug and a drug dealer and an overall not cool dude. And Dragon's like, he ruled this city. He was like running the family business of taking over Seattle, like king of crime in Seattle. And I was his scared little teenager. And then one day, Green Arrow showed up and he beat the ever-loving crap out of my dad, and he took him off his pedestal of invincibility and ruined everything. So now I'm here to show just how soft everyone is under the mighty thing of Dick Dragon. So then we come back over to the Red Dart fight. Her whole thing is like rocket-propelled darts, so they have like the ability to swerve around and such. One of them's a shock one. It hits Oliver, and he just goes down for a little bit. Oliver goes to fire off another arrow. Red Dart gets the hand up and does a cluster fire, and in the smoke of the explosion, she gets right up in front of Oliver, gauntlet in front of his face, and says, oh, flash dart, and then sets off a flash dart, essentially blinding him temporarily. So she goes running off the edge of the building. Oliver's like, you guys stay here. I'm going to go deal with that. And as he goes down, she's just standing there just being like, hey, by the way, I know that I'm a D-lister, but $30 million split 3 ways is still pretty good. And then we see stomping down behind him is Brick, who Oliver just recognizes. I feel like he was around in the pre-Lemire book, but I can't remember him. But regardless, he's just like, yep, nope, I'm here, and we're all going to split this 3 ways. And then he gets, as Oliver's making a snide comment, he gets blown up a little bit, and turns out Killer Moth is also there. And Killer Moth's hurt by being called a D-lister, but he accepts it. So at this point, we cut back over to the Diggle thing, and Dragon's just beating the crap out of Diggle, and he's just like, yes, after my father was brought down, I went and I explored the world, and I came across the League of Assassins, and I was trained by them, and my mentor taught me to get my body into perfect physical condition, and then also taught me that peace, patience, and compassion were all things to make me soft. I killed him, and I took his name. I killed the original Dick Dragon, so I could become Dick Dragon. So now he's back, and he's ready to take out Green Arrow for shaming his father. And Diggle just starts laughing. He's like, you friggin' idiot, you got one thing very wrong. And he's like, yeah, what's that? What'd I get wrong? And he's like, that wasn't Green Arrow, you idiot. That was me dressed up as Green Arrow. I'm the one who beat the crap out of your dad. So back over to the Oliver fight. He's getting his ass handed to him by these D-listers. And then as he's down on the ground, all of a sudden, the D-listers have to take cover from a hail of red arrows. And who is it but, of course, Emiko, who just shows up and says, hey, big brother, I'm the new Green Arrow. And that's the issue. So already we got some branding issues, because if you're going to fire off red arrows and then you're going to call yourself Green Arrow, you might be colorblind. Beyond that, I like this one. I think I like how they try to explain where Forever Evil fits in, despite the fact that, like, no, it didn't. Like, there's no way that that's where Forever Evil happened, and Dick Dragon just somehow retained control of Seattle throughout all that. It's no. Everything else, though, you know, it's fine. I love the art, and I like the direction the story is taking. As much as the hints of Dick Dragon were, I would say, lacking over the last, like, entire arc, here they make him feel more menacing. They give him like a backstory, say, yeah, League of Assassins, it's a whole thing. So I'm down for it at the very least. They've made him interesting as a villain. So I'll give this one, I'll give it an 8, but it's like the lowest possible 8. It's just squeaking by on that. And that's mainly out of expectations of how good it will become and less on what this individual issue does itself. So looking forward to the next part. Justice League 3000 number 7, written by Keith Giffen and J.M. DeMatteis, art by Howard Porter. So last issue, we had all the Justice League being interrogated by Co-Eval, and then Hal Jordan faked his death, showed up, and broke them all out. So we open up this issue with immediately 2 of the 5, Locus and Convert, are immediately like, okay, so the Justice League broke out. What the hell is that all about? Locus jumps in, and she immediately knows it's because of Hal Jordan. So she just launches in and just be like, if I find him, I'm gonna make sure he's dead. I'm gonna gut him. I'm gonna turn reality inside out. I'm gonna do. And as she's just yelling out into the rubble, Hal Jordan, hiding behind her, just zooms into her head as hard as he can, knocks her out cold, and immediately they're just like, that doesn't. Like, he goes back to the rest of Justice League and is like, that doesn't seem very Justice League, you know, a surprise attack. And he's like, if we did it in front, she would tear me apart the same way she did Flash. So yeah, clearly that's what I need to do. And at this point, Hal gets introduced to Ariel, and she's like, okay, look, we got to get off this planet. You got to help us out. And she's like, I'm sorry, who's the lady? And he's like, oh, that's our mom. Don't worry about it. And he's like, no, I got more worries about it now. And she's like, look, I swear to you, I will give you all the answers you want once we're done here, but we need to get off this planet right now. And he's like, fine, whatever. Where do you want to go? And she's like, literally anywhere. So we cut over to Kali and Convert, and Kali was apparently taking over a planet, and she just got done early, so she came on back. And Kali's like, hey, did Justice League break out? Is that what I heard? And he's like, yeah, Locust went and dealt with it. And it's just like, okay, well, let's see how she's doing. And they find her knocked out, and it's just be like, oh, geez, all right, well, that sucks. Should we wake her up? And it's like, nah, we don't need to wake her up yet. So then Firestorm shows up and just be like, hey, I'm here. I'm the one who took her out, and I'm going to do the same to you. And they're like, you took out Locust? And he's like, okay, not really, but I am going to take you guys out. I'm straight up going to kill you. And they're just like, nah, we studied you Justice Leaguers. You got like a code of ethics. You ain't going to kill us. And he's like, no, they have a code of ethics. I personally think that in the year 3000, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to survive. And I'm going to kill you guys. And that's when Co-Eval pops up and he's like, dude, seriously, he's going to do it. I checked out his brain. He's freaking nuts. He will totally kill everyone. And he's just like, yeah, totally. So you guys, are you ready to go? And he's like, oh, well, you forget. Being Co-Eval, I can influence the implants in your brain and I can take you over that way. And he's like, all right, I'll just fry the implants. And he just heats up his brain enough that it gets rid of the implants, and then he flies off saying, like, I'm not going to tell you again, stay away from the Justice League. And Convert's like, is he actually going to kill us? And Co-Eval's like, probably not. I think he was just buying time so the Justice League could get off planet, because while he was doing that to us, they got off planet. And we see them out and away in a Green Lantern construct, just flying off as fast as they can as Firestorm catches up. So Co-Eval starts talking to the group and it's just like, all right, well, maybe we should wake Locust up. And then all of a sudden, a new shadowy figure appears. It's the last of the 5. I believe they named him before Tenebro or something like that. And he's like, don't wake her up. We don't want anything to happen to Ariel. She's the key to all this. We're just going to let the Justice League come to me. And they're just like, oh, you're so sure they're going to come to you? And just like, yeah, absolutely. We'll have Ariel in our reach. I'll take care of her. And then the Justice League, we can just like destroy them or use them for other purposes. Whatever. No big deal. And it's like, okay, well, how do we know Ariel's going to stay with them? She already abandoned them once. It's like, oh, that's because she never met them beforehand. Now that she's met them, she's going to be like a mother duck to them, and they're never going to abandon them. That's just the type of person she is. So we cut over to Cadmus World, and the Terrys, the Wonder Twins, just start the same argument again of, oh, we sent them to die, and we killed innocent people, and blah, blah, blah. But then the boy Terry says something of, we keep on having this conversation over and over again. And frankly, I'm sick of it. And I sit there and I sympathize. I say, yes, boy Terry, please stop. And so he says, look, just take a deep breath and help them get out of space. And he's like, the girl Terry's like, what are you talking about? And then all of a sudden Batman pops on the comms and be like, hey, we're in outer space. You got to help us. And so she asked for a location as to where they're at. And they say that they're on some sort of external planet, some rim world, and they're just telling her lock on the signal and get a read so you can figure out where we're at. And Batman says like, oh yeah, Ariel's here. And he's like, what? Ariel's there? What? Put her on, man. Jesus. So we cut over to Flash and Superman, and Flash is just kind of chilling out on the planet. He's like, it's so peaceful here. I really don't want to like leave. I don't want to deal with anything else. And Superman's like, but we could go back. We got to fight. You know, it's the Justice League way. We take out the bad guys. And Flash is like, dude, I can still remember dying. Like, I remember being torn apart, and I just keep on playing in my head over and over again. Please, for the love of God, I don't want to fight anymore. And Ariel, as Superman starts yelling again, Ariel turns back and be like, hey, guys, cool it. I'm on the phone. So she gets on the phone with the Terrys. And she just immediately starts tearing them apart. Like, of course you freaking idiots decided to continue the project even after I explicitly said, don't continue the project, because you guys are just so impressed or trying to impress the board. You're trying to move up so much. Like, how dare you? And now you want me to bring the Justice League back to you. Have you forgotten that co-eval has been in all of their brains? You're just asking for the 5 to come find you and kill all of you. And Firestorm sets up and he's like, I could just burn their implants if that would work. And he just does it, not even waiting for permission. And the entire Justice League gets super pissed off. He's just like, that was horrible. That was horrific. How dare you do that? And Batman makes the point of like, yeah, no, we didn't have a choice. He did what he needed to do, like, but now we're safe and co-eval can't get to us. And Wonder Woman's like, oh no, it was better that you just put us out of our misery. We're all murderers. And Girl Terry's like, hey, that's the first time Wonder Woman has shown any sort of compassion at all this whole book. Like, maybe she's actually growing into becoming Wonder Woman. That's crazy. And Boy Terry's like, oh, well, that's just not going to work for me. All right. Hey, everybody, could I have your attention? Everyone on the phone? Hi. Hey, look at me. Want to see a magic trick? And then he just snaps Girl Terry's neck. Just on camera, just boom, dead. And immediately Ariel's like, oh my God, what just happened? And we see him press some keys on the computer. He's just like, yeah, nope, this is how it always was going to play out. And then all of a sudden, Barry's head explodes. The Flash dies again. And he's just like, yep, and I can do it to all of you. Everyone who's ever been around the Cadmus area has had nanobots inside their body that can explode at my command. I can easily do that. You all can die. And it's like, oh, Convert, huh? Convert took over. And Terry's like, no, not Convert, just me. And I've always been this way. I'm the guy who made the 5. I'm the 5th of the 5. That's me. And immediately Ariel's like, she's your own sister? And it's like, yeah, whatever. You know, had to do what had to be done. So he commands him just like, all right, get your asses back here. I'm going to blow your brains up. And she's just like, all right, yeah, no, we'll show up. And immediately Superman's like, we're just going to listen to that dude? He's a villain. And it's like, yeah, a villain who's gone full Amanda Waller on us. So like, we can't disobey that. And Firestorm and Hal are looking down at Flash's body, and Hal's just like, hey man, you can control elements, right? Can you bring back my best friend from the dead? And he's just like, nah, it's not really how my powers work. I think he's just dead. And so Superman tries hitting on Wonder Woman, saying like, hey, if we're gonna die, maybe we should, And yeah, just a whole bunch of back and forth here briefly. We see Green Lantern fighting against Superman because Superman's basically saying like, oh yeah, I'm Superman. Isn't that enough for, I could do anything. And Hal's just so pissed off the Flash had to die that it's not, he's just pissed off about it. So as the fight calms down, Ariel's like, enough. All right, look, we lost the 5-1. It's over. And she just goes and sulks off to the side as Terry's like, yep, so I'll see you guys when you get back. Ta-ta. And he shuts off the call. He looks around Cadmus World where everyone's just staring at him, and he's just like, what are you guys looking at? I'll blow you all up too. I meant it. You all have bombs in you. And that's when Koival pops up, and he's just like, I mean, you're out of the shadows now. You're finally revealing yourself. That's pretty cool. So I'm down with all this. And she's just like, yeah, totally. But then Koival points out, like, are you sure you should be keeping the Justice League alive? Like, that seems like a bad move. They do have powers that are difficult to deal with. And he's just like, yeah, you know, I don't see any problems with it. I think we'll be able to handle them no matter what they throw at us. And besides, I want them alive so that I can rub Ariel's face in it when I do finally manage to use them for my own gain. You know, she calls me Wonder Twin. Screw her. And so he's like, all right, well, you're going to have to take out the rest of the Cadmus World at the very least. And he's like, fair enough. So he presses a button and all the buildings just start exploding. And that's the end of that. So, surprise! I'll be honest, they got me with it. We got to the next app panel, and I was like, Jesus Christ. I mean, yeah, I hated you guys arguing the same argument for the past 7 issues, but Jesus Christ. Yeah, no, I mean, do I think that it is a well-seated, like, twist? Meh. I think that looking back on it, it does make a lot of sense as to why Boy Terry was so just completely gung-ho and stupid in a lot of ways. It makes sense that he was evil now, but I also think that it may have been either kept a bit too secret and there wasn't enough hints, or I don't know, there could have just been something, anything to just let me onto the trail that, like, someone in Cadmus is not what they seem, you know? Even if it wasn't specifically Boy Terry. So yeah, no, I'm down with it. I think my main complaint right now is, oh, we're all murderers because we stole the bodies of other people even though we didn't have a say in it and blah, blah, blah. I get it. It's a moral quandary, but just restating the quandary without adding anything to it does not interest make. You know, it doesn't add anything. You need to actually have some characters with differing views on this. Like Firestorm. He's interesting to me as a character now because he is different to all the other characters. He sees things through a different lens. Everyone else is just spouting off the same book. So overall, I'm going to give this one a 7.5. It was very close to the 8, specifically because of how much it caught me off guard and how much of a new status quo we can come into here. But it's just, all of the interpersonal stuff is just a bit too samey for me. We need to mix it up. We need to get characters to have their own independent voices. So yeah, that's my only major gripe right now. So hopefully we can turn that around. Phantom Stranger number 20, written by J.M. DeMatteis, art by Fernando Blanco. So last issue, Stranger fought against, like, Cassandra. I don't know. It was a whole thing. Regardless, at the very end, Spectre showed up and said, bro, you were distracted and the war is being waged elsewhere. So we open up with literally that exact same page where Spectre shows up and says, Stranger, hey, we gotta go. We gotta deal with this. And immediately, Stranger's like, we aren't friends, man. I don't know why you're coming to me. And he's like, yeah, well, the voice that we both listen to says me and you gotta work together. So I'm willing to put that aside in order to work together now. And Stranger's like, I don't really trust you at all. And he's like, I don't care. One day I will turn on you and I will absolutely destroy you, but it ain't going to happen today. So, and plus, what are you talking about trust? You're literally Judas. And he's like, fair enough. All right. And he shakes Spectre's hand. And Xanadu, who's still there caring for Cassandra, is like, I want to come with and save humanity. And he's like, it's more of a buddy cop story, so why don't you stay here and take care of Cassandra, because clearly she can't be left alone right now. And Xanadu's like, all right, yeah, your woman's safe with me. And he's like, she's not my, well, I mean, maybe she is. I don't know. It's confusing. Anyway, bye. So Spectre and Stranger fly off up into the sky, and Stranger's like, I'm thinking this is Sin Eater, because he was kind of at the center of the first, like, tears in reality, so he's probably at the center of this as well. And it's like, well, your vendetta can wait. We've got something more important to do. And then all of a sudden they get teleported into what Stranger calls the Under, which is apparently just this place that's running everywhere under the skin of creation, and it connects all three of the realms, heaven, earth, and hell, and all the other realms in between as well. And this place is filled to the brim with cracks. Like, it's completely shattering here. And Spectre explains, like, you were sealing them off in the physical realm, but like over here, these are all the cracks that are across all of the universe, and there are so many more than just like the couple you saw on Earth. So Spectre and Stranger try to go off and like heal up a few, but it's no use. As soon as they try to do so, it zaps them with some electricity, and it's just like, all right, well, that didn't work, but I guess that means we should go back to the physical realm where we're actually able to heal it up. And Spectre's like, no, we're lost. There's nothing we can do. And immediately Stranger comes back. It's like, actually, I got a dude on the other side named Terrence 13. He's able to track down these things. Maybe he can just do it again and just tell us where they all are. But before they can do anything, Sin Eater, the big dog named Non, and their army of the mostly dead all show up. And Sin Eater's like, ha! It is time! We are launching our attack now. So we cut over to Terrence 13's penthouse, and Zoriel the Angel, like 3 issues ago, died on his bed. So he's like, what am I supposed to do with a dead angel? This is way outside of my range of what I handle. And as he's thinking about what to do, all of a sudden 3 portals of light just appear in his penthouse and says, hey, we've heard your call for help, and it has been answered. So we don't see who's there, but something's going to happen. Cutting back over to Sin Eater. And he's like, hey, you may recognize my army of the dead. It's the people from the area of Heaven's Basement. That's where you went to when you went after Dr. Light Stranger. You remember that? Yeah, I brought them all here, and now they are my army, and we're going to attack reality. And he explains that when Stranger went into creation, looking for Dr. Light, breaking the rules that God laid out, he caused a hairline fracture in reality. And normally that would heal itself. But Sin Eater and Non just kept pushing at it and kept on like making things worse until finally it's come to this. And they're like on the verge of shattering all of reality and bringing heaven and all the realms just merged together. So we see the army is attacking Spectre and Stranger, and it actually manages to drain them of their divine powers. They just resume being normal dudes. And Sin Eater comes up, he just smacks Stranger upside the head in his mortal form, and Non is like, hey, cut it out. I got big things going on. And he's like, but you said I could attack Phantom Stranger. And he's like, yeah, and you will. But I got stuff to do right now, so chill. I am your master, and that dude has done more with his entire life than you could ever dream of. So back off. And he's just like, yes, master, I will. So Non then steps up, and he's like, all right, so I'm pretty much the devil. Like, I'm not exactly the devil, but I'm kind of the stand-in here. And I broke away from the voice, and I've found this unimaginable power. So let me tell you exactly what the plan here is. I'm going to allow one of you the honor of starting this new world with me, but only one. And I'm letting you guys decide who wants it more. So he makes the pitch over to Stranger, saying like, oh, you betrayed your god and you were a complete traitor. Like, you could start this new world totally fresh, do whatever you want there. And you, James Corrigan, the Spectre, you had your life robbed from you and you were turned into the wrath of God against your will. But now I'm offering you a new start. You can have whatever you want there. So who's it going to be? And Corrigan stands up. He's just like, I'm in. I'm down for it. And I mean, now that I'm not currently overcome by the Spectre, I'm totally down to just change it up. So he steps up and he's willing to go against Phantom Stranger. They hand him a knife that was forged in the bowels of hell from metal from the mountains of paradise, and it's able to definitively kill Phantom Stranger and devour its soul. So Stranger's just like, don't do this, man. You this isn't about me or God or whatever. This is about what's humanity. You're dooming all of humanity if you do this. And he's just like, you're going to lecture me? You literally betrayed Jesus Christ. Like that, don't worry about that. So he plunges down the knife, And they fight for a little bit. He manages to hold off, but then eventually Corrigan lands it inside of Stranger's body. And Non's like, oh, sweet, awesome. I didn't actually expect that to work. And then all of a sudden, a blinding light appears out of Phantom Stranger, and he turns into this giant fiery-looking form. And he's like, surprised? Yeah, no. So what happened here is the divine powers in the Mystic Blade merged both my mystic stuff and Spectre's mystic stuff into one super mystic thing. And we now have power that can easily overtake all of you. And Non's like, I don't believe it. All right, everyone attack. And so they all go in and attack. And immediately he just starts bashing people away. And Sin Eater's like, no, you can't win. I don't want you to win. And Non just bails, I think. I think he just runs off. He just bounces. He has no time for this. He's like, whatever, I'll deal with it later. So at that point, Spectre and Phantom Stranger split back apart, but they are still got extra power because of the knife. So they start going against the forces. Meanwhile, Phantom Stranger faces down against Sin Eater. Sin Eater's like, Master, Non, please help me. And he's just like, hey, your god's gone. He left. He's abandoned you, and he's going off to do his own things again. You're here. You're alone, and I'm going to do what I have to. And it seems like he's about to seek vengeance on Sin Eater, but he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not God's wrath, but I am going to leave you to your army of like divine energy sucking beings. And he lays Sin Eater down into the middle of his army, and they just start devouring him. And immediately Stranger's like, I shouldn't have done that. And so he goes to like pick him back out again, but it's too late. Sin Eater is just a shell of a person now. He's babbling incoherently. He's gone completely crazy. And Spectre's like, all right, cool, good job. I guess heaven and earth, the cracks will start healing themselves up and everything's super good. And you got divine judgment on Sin Eater. And Phantom Stranger's like, well, yeah, we did a pretty good job. And he outstretches his hand for a handshake, and immediately Spectre's like, I still don't like you, man. You still suck. As much as we fuse together, I still hate you, and I'm still going to beat you up one day. So whatever, I'm out, bye. And he just flies away. And Phantom Stranger picks up the body of Sin Eater, now just Philip Stark, his original form. And he's like, well, I guess I have to go find a way to lay him down to rest. It's only what he deserves, redemption and all that stuff. So he takes the body of Sin Eater out of the gray space and goes somewhere else. And that's all we got for this issue. I don't know. I gotta say the art wasn't really impressing me the whole way through. Even on the very first page, I was just kind of like, it doesn't look great, and it just never improved from that. I think Non looked pretty good, but I think that's just good character design, not even on the artist. I think it's just a cool looking character. So yeah, I don't know. This issue was kind of just a dud for me, especially as the big wrap up to these cracks in creation. It's like they fused. That's it. That's all that happened, and it's supposed to be this big moment, but it wasn't. So I don't know. I guess I'll say this one's a 6 for me. It didn't resonate with me as much as I would have hoped. So yeah, that's Phantom Stranger for now. Swamp Thing number 32, written by Charles Soule, art by Jesus Saiz. So not in the last issue. Well, yes, in the last issue, Aquaman showed up. And then over in Aquaman, him and Swamp Thing fought. And Aquaman brought up how there's this big thing of algae that Swamp Thing's not aware of that's just killing all the life around it. So Swamp Thing in this issue, off of a reef in the Philippines, he goes underwater. And he's like, I haven't really spent a lot of time talking to underwater plants. They're more ancient, and they feel different. I don't know. I need to investigate this some more. Maybe, God forbid, I do some science every once in a while. And as he makes his way through the reef, he comes across this giant algae creature that just is not part of him. It's not part of the green. It's not something he can control. And he's like, all right, that's weird, but I'm still Avatar of the Green. I still control that, so I'll just go in and deal with that. And then as soon as he gets close to the creature, it wraps its tendrils around him and starts absorbing him. And he's like, what the hell? Jeez, oh God, I'm going to die. And then all of a sudden, he gets a trident to the chest and he is pulled away from the beast, and Aquaman shows up. And he's like, I had a feeling you'd show up, but this time I'm ready for you. You're not going to get that. Drop on me. And Swamp Thing recounts everything that happened over in Aquaman, and he's like, yeah, all right. But in between the issues, he went and he talked to, I think it's Brother Jonah, and he's like, hey, Atlantis is real. I don't know if this is a shock to you, but Aquaman was telling me something about how there is a giant algae mass that's like killing a bunch of stuff, and I can't feel it in the green. Do you know what that's all about? And Jonah's like, sounds like, okay, hold on. I'm going to have to go get the others for you. So he gets together Wolf and Lady Weeds, and Wolf calls it God, it's in German, Kreuzblutler. I'm not going to call it that again, but just know it is called that. And Swamp Thing's like, look, guys, I need you to be explaining stuff to me here. You guys used to be like advisors in the green. I want you to be that same thing here. And they're like, bro, you killed the green. Did you, like, ignoring the fact that we don't want to be here and you were asking us to just be free advisors for you? When you killed the green, did you think there weren't going to be any consequences? No. The Parliament of Trees did more than just argue with you all the time. They kept the peace. They, like, kept things stable. You may have been the fighter for the green, but they were, like, the road management people. And when you killed the green, it caused offshoots. It caused things that otherwise would have been controlled to spiral out. And now this big algae mass, it's essentially developed its own green, and it's primal. It doesn't have any controlling factor to it anymore, and it's not a part of you. So we cut back to now. Aquaman comes up and he's like, all right, I thought long and hard about how to beat you, and I finally came up with it. Manatees, dugongs, they will be my attacking force. And all the dugongs come in and just start eating Swamp Thing. And he's like, yep, all right, this is a good plan. And so he looks over at the algae creature and he is like, all right, if Swamp Thing's not going to be able to deal with this, I will take care of it. And Swamp Thing's watching all this happen from like the plants inside of the dugongs. He's like aware of it. And he watches as Aquaman commands an entire like school of fish to come up and just start eating the algae creature. And he's like, that's not going to work. And then all of a sudden all the fish start exploding. And he's like, yeah, that's pretty much what I expected. And he knows that he can use the plants that were just eaten inside the dugongs to come out, but he doesn't want to piss off Aquaman, so he doesn't. Instead, he uses just a tiny little shred of nearby algae that wasn't taken care of. And he's like, Aquaman, hey, that's not going to work. Stop attacking it. And he's like, I made sure there were no other plants nearby. How the hell are you doing this? And he's like, you can never get rid of all the plants. Trust me on that. But look, this is my job to deal with. Let me handle this, and I swear to God, I am not your enemy here. And he's like, well, I don't think you're a friend either. And he's like, fair enough. I don't care if I'm your friend, but like, let me handle this because this is my job. And Aquaman's like, fine, whatever, do it. So he goes in and he manages to attach himself to the giant algae creature, and he goes inside of that creature's green, the offshoot version. And inside is a version of Aquaman and a dugong just sitting in beach chairs sipping mimosas, and it's just like, you're supposed to be so smart. How many degrees do you have? But like, you don't even know what's going on here anymore. And apparently they start chewing him out for how he doesn't speak German and he doesn't know what a Kreuzblutler is. So at this point, there's a huge noise off from the side, and Swamp Thing goes, he looks at it, and he's like, what the hell is that? And as he looks back at the version of Aquaman inside there, they've disappeared. So outside in the real world, Aquaman's still trying to attack the algae monster. It manages to get his tendrils on him, and Aquaman cuts his way out, and he's like, all right, enough of this. He calls up an Atlantean guard, and he's like, all right, bring them. So inside of the offshoot green, the Kreuzblutler, he sees that there is this giant wooden beast that is kind of looking like him, and he's like, okay, so this is an offshoot of the green, so maybe in some weird primal sense it realizes it has to have an avatar, it has to have a fighter, and this is its like best approximation because the only thing it's ever known is me. This is its approximation of me. And so it like slams down a fist on Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing just explodes the fist, and he's like, sorry man, but you're just out of your league. I am so much more outclassing you. You need to go back to sleep. So out in the outside world, Aquaman's pulled in a bunch of giant crab mechs, and he's like, look, I don't want to do this. It's going to kill uncounted amount of species, but we need to just burn this whole area to the ground. Make sure this algae is not able to spread. Take it all out. And Aquaman's waiting to give the order. He looks at it and he's like, all right, yes, I'm ready to do it. Fire on my mark. But then immediately Swamp Thing, you see the algae just transform into his face. And he's like, we're good. And Aquaman's like, all right, hold on, Swamp Thing. We're good. That's not going to happen again. And he's like, I don't think so. And he's like, that's not good enough. I need to know this isn't going to happen again. He's like, look, you had me eaten. You were about to blow me up. And I have come back and I am not taking over your kingdom. So trust me, we're good. And Aquaman's like, hold up. That's like, I've got an entire realm to protect. This is my domain. And Swamp Thing's like, bro, plants were here long before Atlanteans were, and they still are here. This is my domain, and I'm letting you just watch it, okay? Don't make me come back here. And Aquaman just stands there like, geez, all right, I just got told off by Swamp Thing. So we go back to the home, and Swamp Thing talks to his 3 advisors, and he's like, guys, look, you're not being upfront with me. If there's stuff I need to know now that the green is gone, you got to tell me the stuff. First it was the serene, and then the gray existing. Now it's the Kreuzblütler. Like, please, tell me anything I need to know here. And Jonah's actually the one who steps up, and he's like, dude, you killed the green. You killed the parliament. This is your story now. And if it's being told poorly, that's on you. That's not, we don't have to help you like that. You're the one who made this decision. And he's like, but come on, like, we're a team, right? And that's when Weed steps up and he's like, look, we all understand this is just a symbolic gesture and it's not actually doing anything, but dear God, I have to need to do this. And she pulls out a knife and says, you never had us at a team and you never will, and stabs the knife into his head, which obviously, yes, is just a symbolic gesture, but it's punchy. So I have to just point out right now the memeability of this issue. The giant face of Swamp Thing just looking up at, like, it's such a weird angle, and it's just, the speech box is just, we're good. I love it. I love it so much. This has so many memeable pages in it. Add on to that the Dugong and Aquaman just having mimosas. I love this. This is such a well-done crossover where it doesn't feel like either character is particularly written out of character, but Swamp Thing is just a class act the whole way through. I love it. So I'm going to give this one an 8.5. I really enjoyed this one. I don't know why. Like, Swamp Thing Aquaman crossover just tickled my funny bone for some reason. So yeah, definitely check this one out if you haven't. Aquaman 31. Aquaman 31 and Swamp Thing 32. Definitely a solid crossover. Batman Eternal number 9, written by Snyder, Tynion, Fawkes, Layman, and Seeley, art by Guillem, March. So this issue picks up outside of GCPD. Commissioner Forbes is leaving, and as he hops into a cab, turns out the cab driver is some criminal named Roadrunner who's got a ridiculously souped out looking cab, but I assume that it just transformed into that way, or else Forbes is an idiot. So it traps him in there, and he's just like, do you know who I am? I'm commissioner. I run the cops. And he's like, yeah, and my boss runs you. So he drives him across town, and they meet up with Falcone. And Falcone's like, hey, Forbes, my place got hit again last night. I've got 8 men in medical attention, 4 of them are in critical condition, and I lost $375,000. And Forbes is like, wait, hold on. Batman is stealing from you? That doesn't sound like Batman. That's something else entirely. It's like, no, not Batman, you freaking idiot. Catwoman. And we see Catwoman is, breaking in, stealing all Falcone's stuff. And Falcone rubs the scar on his face. He's very upset by that. And Forbes is like, I'm sorry, I thought the priority was Batman. And he's like, yeah, Batman is a priority. But the thing I told you was getting rid of all the costumed freaks. And Catwoman definitely counts in that. So she is your other top priority now. You need to take her out, okay? And Forbes is like, okay, but if you notice, we scared Batman last issue, and he hasn't been around since. So he's laying low thanks to me. And Falcone's like, you're an idiot if you actually believe that. No, Batman, wherever he is right now, he's not lying low. I guarantee you that. And so we cut over to Hong Kong, and Batman's fighting a bunch of ninjas, because of course he is. And they're attacking with like flaming swords and stuff. And one of them says like, oh, you travel so far to die. And we see that the Batman of Japan, whose name is Hero, shows up, and he jumps in and he's like, hey, Batman, remember Batman Incorporated? That's a thing, and I'm happy to help out wherever I'm needed. And he introduces the gang that they're ghost dragons. They're enforcers of the local crime lord named Shen Fang. And he's like, yeah, no, totally. There was a gang war that went on in Hong Kong between Carmine Falcone and Shen Fang, and then Falcone theoretically was going to win, like no problem, but then all of a sudden Shen Fang pulled it out and Falcone just disappeared, and we're not sure what happened there. And Batman's like, well, Falcone's over in my city now, so I really need to figure out exactly what happened there. So let's figure out where Shen Fang is. And this is where we see across the city the woman that we got introduced to last issue, who's scaling up the building. British accent, because she says bollocks. She looks out and says, Batman, stay out of my way. So we cut over to the Wayne Industries tower here, where the penthouse is reserved for Batman Incorporated. We get introduced to Hero's team, a young girl who can shrink and has bird wings. Her name is Canary, and a old man who makes tea, and his name is Master Hong, and he's apparently able to read the tea leaves. And Master Hong's like, Batman, there's some dark stuff going on in Gotham. You better get back there quick, man. He's like, yeah, totally, I will. Just let me deal with the stuff going on over here. So they talk more about the gang war, and they say how, it affected all of the area, including Japan at a certain point, and that's how Hero got involved. And it was a bunch of stuff of like Yakuza being hired and triads and stuff like that. But then, as he said, one day Falcone just left, and Shen Fang was allowed to take over, and like they don't know what happened there, but Shen Fang is currently in control of all the operations here. So at that point, Batman's like, all right, well, do we know where to get to him? He's like, yeah, but he's going to be guarded by tons of like martial artists and bodyguards, murderers and gangsters. And he's like, perfect, he's going to need them. So they go in, they immediately start taking out all the ninjas and samurai and whatever else going on there. Hero says, don't worry about me, that I'll take all of them out, no problem. You go and take care of Shen Fang. So he makes his way just knocking out people on the way in, and finally gets to Shen Fang's door. And standing in the way is this woman, and he says, not so fast, Batman, Shen Fang is mine. And he's like, are you a bodyguard? And she's like, no, he has to pay for his crimes. I'm here to take him out. And Batman's like, do I know you? And she's like, nope, and you don't need to. And he's like, okay, can we like work together then? Because clearly we both want the same thing. And she's like, not going to happen. You're not going to walk in there and screw up everything I've worked so hard for. And then she gets stabbed through the back, like through her stomach by Shen Fang, saying like, yeah, nah, I mean, I'll do that. So she's bleeding out on the ground. Batman's like, are you Shen Fang? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, cool, I just want to ask you some questions. And him and Shen Fang start fighting. And she's like, okay, well, if we're going to go down this route, I'm going to hurt you first, and then I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. And he's like, oh, I'd love to see you try. Batman just punches him in the face, knocks out a tooth or two. He's like, I'll never talk. And he's like, all right, well, we'll see. And he just keeps on punching. He's like, all right, fine, Jesus, I'll answer. He's like, all right, tell me, what happened? How did you beat him? How did you beat Falcone? And he's like, I didn't. Falcone, he wanted a meeting one day. He was totally going to smoke my ass. And then he just said, he had a lucrative opportunity show up in Gotham. He wanted to bail out of this war, and he was willing to let me take control if I split the profits with him. And it's like, how much the profits? It's like 60% goes to him. It's like, Jesus, that's pathetic. You gave up most of your money to this guy just so he didn't run away. So Shen Fang's out. Some of his goons go running. Hero walks in just being like, let him run. They've lost all honor for their boss, and that means everything around here. So his criminal empire's done. And Batman's like, okay, I still don't know why he went over to Gotham. That didn't answer my question. And it's like, yeah, no, totally. Also, hey, who's the chick? And so we cut back over to Gotham, where Catwoman is breaking into one of Falcone's vaults. There's a guy just counting money outside that she threatens, and he's like, oh, here's the vault combination. She's like, thank you, sweetie. So she busts open the door, and standing inside are a bunch of armed guards who immediately taser her, hit her in the face a few times, and take her down. And of course, Falcone steps out of the shadows, and he's like, you got this personal vendetta with me, which makes you super predictable, that you're just going to keep on hitting my stuff and my stuff alone. So yeah, I set up a trap. And remember when you gave me these scars, you said something to remember you by? I'm going to give you some scars of your own, but you're not going to have to live with them. So The final thing we get, the epilogue, is Batman flying back. He calls up Alfred being like, hey, ready the guest room. We're going to have somebody staying with us. It's this young woman who was there. She got stabbed through the stomach and she's going to be recovering. And Alfred's like, is now the best time to have just a new member of the Bat family show up? And he's like, well, funny story about that, Alfred. I ran her fingerprints in her blood. Nothing was coming up, so I dug a little deeper. She's part of a super secret special reconnaissance thing, and her name is Julia Pennyworth. What do you got about that, Alfred? And Alfred just like is shook. He is absolutely like, oh my God. So Julia Pennyworth. That's a person. That's a character. See who that turns out to be. Yeah, no, it's a solid issue. I mean, it's definitely we're pacing and we're filling out the time where we got to take Batman over to Hong Kong. We're introducing Hong Kong, China stuff. Like, it's a complete diversion from the main plot, but for pacing's sake, if you got to fill 52 issues, I get it. I understand. So I'm going to give this one, I'll give it a flat 7. It's enjoyable enough. I do think the Guillem March art is just a little bit distracting at times, but it's not awful. There's only a few pages that I think I'm like, no, like, that's not a face. But beyond that, it's just kind of just a pacer issue. Let's add a little bit to the story here. And even though we didn't really learn anything in terms of Batman's plot, we developed a whole new character. So looking forward to seeing how that turns out. Future's End number 5, written by Azzarello, Lemire, Giffen, and Jurgens, art by Jesus Merino. So this issue picks up with apparently a new holiday called Techmas, where it's like the third Wednesday in June is just when all the cool tech stuff is revealed. And Terrifitech has a thing coming up. So we see the whole studio getting prepped to the countdown happening in live in 3, 2. And then all of a sudden in the middle of Times Square, Mr. Terrific's face shows up and he goes, "You people together." Yes. And it's literally just like 5 straight pages of just buzzwords out the ass. But the big thing that he's pitching here is U-spheres, which essentially are brain backups / additives. Like, they're things that can help you be smarter and help you accomplish your dreams. And all of us can come together with the new U-spheres and whatever. And everyone's so happy about it. And then as the broadcast ends, he's like, now that's how you're a superhero. So then we cut over to Sutter's Cove, Maryland, where King Faraday has taken the paralyzed body of Grifter, because he got shot at the end of last issue, if you don't recall. And King Faraday's like, all right, so I have, like, the media found you, they have labeled you a serial killer, and then I stole you away in the dead of night in order to present with you this ultimatum. And Grifter's like, don't you mean opportunity? And he's like, no, ultimatum. So I'm offering you a job, and you pretty much have to take it, and I just want to be like, just let me say what it is, and don't interrupt me with your snarky comments, okay? And so he's like, all right, fine, get on with it. So he says, like, okay, look, I'm going to send you off to the island. And he's like, what? Island? I don't want to go to an island. And he's just like, Jesus Christ, kid, like, for the love of God, can you just let me tell my thing? And during this sequence, we see that a young girl just appears in the background and then disappears. We'll get to her. So he keeps on interrupting Faraday. Faraday pulls in an orderly to gag Grifter, and he's like, all right, well, now that's done with, let me tell you what this is all about. You're going to have a new partner. She'll fill you in on all your duties. Just don't piss this girl off. And once we get you to the island, I will restore your mobility. You'll no longer be paralyzed. So we then go to Cadmus Island, where we see an OMAC. I don't think the OMAC, because there's several of them, but an OMAC is chasing down this woman. And they do a scan on her to get her name, and apparently her code name is Fury, which I believe is the character that was introduced over in Earth 2, and she's like theoretically the daughter of Wonder Woman to some extent. But we see her being chased down by the OMAC and then just ripping out. She turns around, just rips out all of his wiring and stuff. Another one shows up with lasers. She dodges around and she's like, oh, pathetic. You techno-organic freaks. And she rips off one of their heads. She's like, oh, I fought parademons. You guys suck. So as she is covered in blood and whatnot, this young girl, the same young girl from before, shows up and says, excuse me, I come here to sulk in peace. You're ruining my sulking time. And she's like, what? Are you going to try to stop me? And she's like, I don't know. And so she calls out saying like, oh, you were faking whatever medical thing you had, and you killed the doctor who was looking out for you, and you stole her uniform. That's how you managed to escape. But the problem that you made here was that you killed that doctor. Her name was Molly Hutchins, and I happen to like Molly. So yeah, I am going to stop you. And then she blasts Fury with some heat vision, and just like, well, now you've got a reason to be in the med bay. So she then turns around and she's like, oh yeah, where was I? That's right, the grifter, paralyzed dude who can see aliens. Fantastic job there, Faraday. So then we cut over to New York and we meet up with Firestorm, who apparently was partying at the Playboy Mansion. And he's like, oh boy, what a wild night. Wouldn't you agree, Jason? But Jason's not responding. And he's like, Jason, are you still giving me the cold shoulder? What's going on, man? You can't hold a grudge forever. And then we see inside of his mind, and Jason is just floating in a void. And he's like, I have been stuck here for weeks. I can't even, like, I'm not even recognizing what's going on in the outside world anymore. Like, I see what Firestorm sees, but like, I'm numb. I don't feel anything. I'm fading away. And if I stay in here for much longer, I'm going to just disappear. And then all of a sudden he hears Raymond's voice saying, hey, wake up, we're home, we gotta talk. And so he splits the Firestorm apart, finally freeing Jason. Jason collapses to the ground and then immediately gets up and just being like, you kept me in there for weeks. You have may have destroyed my life. I have probably lost my job, lost my scholarship. I missed finals. You have taken everything away from me, and I begged for you to let me out, and you just didn't care. You didn't care at all. You've betrayed me to my core. And Ronnie comes back being like, well, you were going to betray me. You were going to tell the Justice League that I'm the reason Ollie's dead. And he's like, you are the reason Ollie's dead. You were supposed to be there for him, but all you cared about was yourself. And he's like, no. That's not what this is about. I don't want to be Firestorm, because during the war, my mom died, and Firestorm should have been able to protect her, but he didn't. Like, I wasn't enough then. So yeah, I'm done. You know what? I don't want to be Firestorm anymore. And Jason's like, same, man. I'm never going to fuse with you again. You taken that of like, I'm never going to be okay with that. And he's like, fine, all right. So they go their separate ways and they just say it's over forever. So Jason walks into this, I guess, museum, university building. Hard to say what exactly. He checks his phone. He's got like 900 mixed texts. And he comes in and his professor, a doctor, whatever you want to call him, guy running his internship, is like, hey, where have you been? And he's like, medical emergency. And he's like, all right, whatever. You want to see the work I've been doing? So he lets him into the lab, and turns out this doctor also lost people during the war, and says like, we could have saved a lot of people if we had the Justice League's teleporter tech, but they refused to share it with us, and that just doesn't seem fair to me. So instead, I am going to make it myself. And I've made great strides in the past few weeks, and I'm ready to start like the final stretch here. And I just want you to help me out, Jason. So we cut over to a cornfield out in Kansas, and we get introduced to two people, one named Tommy and one named Midge. I am not sure who they are, but they have recently brought along Constantine. And Constantine's like, where the hell are we? And it's like, Kansas, cornfield. And he's just like, yeah, very funny. He's like, no, seriously, that's where we're at. He's like, all right, well, what do you want from me? And so she hands him an envelope full of pictures, and he says Struth, which it's not like bolded, so I don't know if it's like a thing I need to know, or if it's just one of Constantine's random like British words he throws out. But regardless, looking at the images, he sees like a bunch of dead bodies, and he's like, oh, that happened here? And it's just like, yeah, totally. Why? What's this place? And Constantine, they're standing in just, as we see, a crop circle, basically. It's a big dead zone area. And he's like, yeah, this is known as a killing field. It's from a lab. It's been here since before we were even living in caves. It's an ancient evil that like drains the life out of you through your feet. And it's 3 like blobs, basically. And he basically says it's bad news, it's not good, and like it's basically means that like death is coming. And as we zoom out, we see that these 3 circles out in the field connected by lines make up what is undoubtedly the Brainiac symbol. So Brainiac's involved somehow, as he always is in literally everything. We will get to it at some point, I guess. As for this issue, I don't know. It seemed like it was throwing a bit too much stuff out. Yes, we already had the Grifter subplot and like showed him getting to the point where he was at, but they threw out a lot of stuff of like Cadmus Island and all this stuff going on if he's going to have a partner, and there's this young girl with heat vision and Fury's on this island with a bunch of Omacs, and then we get Constantine and Brainiac, and it didn't feel like it was organically growing out of what I already knew was happening in the previous stuff. The only thing that felt good was we finally got the capper on Firestorm. We show that Jason's finally freed there, but I don't feel like that's the end of it. Obviously, I feel like we're going to come back to that, and they're going to have to deal with a lot more of the fallout to this. So, all in all, it just kind of felt like a little bit of a messy issue to me. But at least if we're still in the setting up phase, if we're still showing the different things floating about, which I think issue 5 out of 48, it's fine to still be setting up. It at least has some interesting things going for it. I'm curious what the OMAX stuff is, how we can get definitions on that. If Constantine's going to be lending a magic ear to this, I'm wanting to see how that's going to mess with the techno stuff going on. It's got some interesting paths to go down. I just hope that it gets there. So overall, I'm going to say this is I'll give it a 6.5. It's just shy of a 7, but it is still technically good. And that's it. That's all the comics put out by DC Comics this June 4th, 2014. And next week, honest to God, pretty decent. It's only 12 comics. This is a very light month for me, and I fully recognize the fact that it's because Forever Evil ended and took like 4 comics with it, and they just haven't gotten around to putting out new number 1s to fill in the gaps yet. But they're starting next week, so why don't I go ahead and give you that list real quick. Next week we have Batgirl, Birds of Prey, Detective Comics, Superboy, Superman/Wonder Woman, Green Lantern Corps, Justice League United, World's Finest, Constantine, our 2 weekly books of Batman Eternal and Future's End, and a brand new number 1, which is Infinity Man and the Forever People. And I know there are certain people out in the audience now saying, now wait a minute, hold on. I remember the New 52, and I don't remember Infinity Man and the Forever People. Where was this book? And I'll tell you why you don't remember it. It's because it's the same creative team that was on OMAC at the very beginning of the New 52, aka Dan DiDio and Keith Giffen, and this book was so not bought that it is the second title that was never collected in trade paperback, following Green Team Teen Trillionaires. So we're in for a hoot with this book because Dan DiDio just thinks, I only want to write Jack Kirby books, and for some reason they're not selling, but I'm just going to keep doing it because I'm co-publisher and I could just do whatever I want. Thanks, Dan. Real cool of you. Anyway, I don't think I really have anything else to add, so I'll just do my little outro bit here. If you have anything that you would like to add, go ahead and hit me up in the comments down below this YouTube video or in the comments wherever you can happen to find them. We have multiple different social media things such as a Discord or a subreddit or a Patreon. All of those are available in the description wherever the hell you're watching or listening to this. But yeah, that's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for watching and listening to this. Be sure to tune in next episode. Give this thing a positive interaction, however it is you could do that. And always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.